Hey, it's Ted and Greg back here for section 2 of the LBI Surf Fishing Clinic. Hopefully you guys checked out part 1. If you did not, be sure to check back on that, get you up to speed in terms of the intro here to surf fishing. So right now we're going to talk about the equipment, the different rods and reels, lures, tackle, line, knives, all the essentials. We're going to go through it with Ted here, and hopefully this points you guys in the right direction in terms of getting geared up and ready for the season.
We start with bait fishing, which is just what it says. Variety of rods, variety of reels, primarily different sizes for different fish and different water conditions. For the purpose of today's seminar, we're just going to call them large and medium. And what you typically have with a large and medium rod is you've got a reel. And you could have a spinning reel or you could have a conventional reel. One of the things that we really recommend you do as you're getting ready for your trip is to make sure that you check your rods. You want to check your rods to make sure that there's primarily no damage to your line guides. It can be very deceptive. A lot of them have ceramic rings on the inside, they crack, and you'll be very frustrated as to why you keep snapping off during your cast, or even worse when you have a fish on. Very easy to check with a Q-tip. Run it inside your line guides. If your Q-tip frays and comes out tattered, you've got some issues. Also, since a lot of folks are traveling, they don't have their reels attached to their rods. You want to make sure that your reel seats are clean and functioning. Wipe them down, make sure your threads are clean so you don't get here, go to put your reel on and find out that your reel seat's not functioning correctly. We're not going to get into the correct rod for intended use.
Let me say, if you're looking for information in terms of the proper rod and reel, if you're new to surf fishing, you want to try to get in the game, maybe you want to get a new rod or reel, maybe you want to upgrade for your rod or reel. If you need help with your rod and reel outfit, maybe you've got some issues with your reel, maybe your guides are cracked, you need any kind of help like that, stop by Fisherman's Headquarters. We do reel service. There's also 2 other tackle shops in LBI. Fill you up with new line, can do a guide repair. This way you can be prepared for the fishing at stake before you kind of head out and go. Being prepared is definitely half the battle. Once you get the bite, you got the quality fish on, it's the last place you want to be dealing with tackle failure. You want to make sure you iron that all out beforehand.
Yeah, and then just to go a step further, you want to make sure that your retrieve works on your reel. Obviously, that's the crank, that it's free, it's not noisy, it's not frozen. Then you also want to make sure that your bail's going to open and then close upon the beginning of your retrieve. Just checking it for general functionality. Now we get into the line. A lot of personal preference here, but there are some parameters, and again, 3 great bait and tackle shops on the island. Nothing worse than getting all the way to the 9-yard line and having a tackle failure because you didn't think about the fact that the line that's on your reel is 7 years old. The time to check it is before you walk up over the dune or before you drive on the ramp. So we want to check the amount of line that's on the reel, we want to check the test of the line that's on the reel, and we want to check the condition of it for the intended use, and that goes for mono or braid. Very important.
Yeah, I find a very easy way to test your line if it is older. If it is, I'd say a year or 2, maybe it's okay. If more than a couple years old, I would definitely replace it. So just a quick tip, tie a knot in your line. If it breaks right away, it's brittle, it's old, replace it. It's better to be safe than sorry though. If it's a year, 2 years old, depending how much you fish, switch it out. It's not worth it.
Yeah, no, and always, if you feel your line is in good shape, always strip some off before you start your next trip. And that's what you should do after Greg mentioned what he recommends. Go down a little deeper and see if it happens again. If so, it's time for new line. We're going to talk about a sand spike, a pet peeve of mine. Besides the weather, it's probably the next thing that ruins a trip the quickest, and that's sand. Sand is your enemy. A good sand spike will save you so much angst in the long run and prolong the life of your tackle and make your trip so much more enjoyable. A good sand spike, there's one here that you'll see a close-up of shortly. I live and swear by one. Over the years, that's what I've graduated to. It's the only spike I use for a multitude of reasons. You know you don't need a sledgehammer and a piece of 2x4 to put a sand spike in the sand. You pick your spot, you wiggle it back and forth, front and back, and when you think you're down to the correct depth, go down deeper, because that's an accident waiting to happen. Then we're going to get into some knives. Well, why do I need all these knives? It's not all. You need 3. Basically, you need a clam knife, because if you buy live hard shell clams that you're going to use for bait, you want to make sure that you have a clam knife, because a clam knife is not typically sharp, nor does it have a sharp tip to it, okay? And that's used strictly to open clams that you might be using for bait. Then you're going to have some other knives that you're going to use for cutting your chunk bait, etc. And then, most important knife of all, once you catch that fish, you got to figure out how to clean it. You want to have a good fillet knife. So that's real important. It seems like an overwhelming list, but all of it is fairly basic. And once you buy it and you have it and you take care of it, as you can see here, a lot of the equipment here is old. It's been around for a long time, but it's priceless, and you invest in it and you take care of it. Pliers, a lot of different kinds of pliers. What happens to pliers? They always rust up. Why do they rust up? Because we use them and we don't squirt them off and let them dry after every use. It's the same thing as all your equipment. Imperative that you squirt everything down after every use. You might have a rod that you never put in the water, but you carried it up the beach, or it sat in the driveway for 2-3 days while you're here on the island. Imperative you squirt it down with fresh water. It'll pay huge dividends in the long run. And everything needs to be washed and cleaned after every trip. 2 main purposes for pliers. You want to be able to remove a hook from a fish, hopefully, and you also want to be able to cut your line once you tie a knot, or tie a lure, or tie a shocker, or tie a leader. So you want a good pair of pliers, and you want to take care of them, and you want them close by. Then what we have next on the list, we've already pretty much got into. I showed you the smaller cooler earlier in the first part of the segment, and then a large cooler, which hopefully you're able to put a fish in at the end of your trip. One of the next things we're going to give you a peek at are spikes, cleats, commonly called corkers, which is a brand name. They're essential if you plan on fishing the rocks. So now that we've gone over some equipment, why don't we get into some tackle, and we'll talk about bait fishing, and we'll talk about hooks and sinkers.
Yeah, so a very common question we get at the shop when customers come in looking to fish bait is, what bait should you be using, and what rigs and what style hooks. So for here on Long Beach Island in the fall and spring, most common bait would be bunker. Fresh bunker is definitely best. Chunking bunker is probably the most popular style of bait fishing. Second would be clams, and then mullet. Some people kind of get into bloodworms more for kingfish. You can fish live eels, which is somewhat of a specialty, live bait style fishing, but those would be kind of the basics. For bunker chunking, you're gonna need a bigger hook. As you see here, we've got some Gamakatsus. They're a top brand. Mustad's also a very good brand. Owner's a very good brand. Maybe you want to buy a pre-tied rig. All the tackle shops in LBI have pre-tied rigs for simplicity's sake. However, if you want to kind of get dialed in and really fine-tune and get more advanced with your fishing, you can buy your own hooks, your own specific style hooks. As you see here, these are a larger style J hook. There's also octopus circle hooks. Soon the regulations will be changing. You'll be required to only fish circle hooks. So that's coming down the pike, but a circle hook's very good for chunking, as well as a larger size J hook. Common question is, what's the size? So to me, the easiest rule of thumb is you always match your hook to your bait, or your bait to your hook. So if you've got big baits, you need a bigger hook. If you're gonna fish a smaller bait, you need a smaller hook. You can catch very big fish on small hooks. You can catch very small fish on, we'll say, medium or medium-large hooks. But really depends on more application-specific topics. But for this scenario, I can just tell you that common size 7, 8, 9, 10, 12-0 would be a common chunking hook. You start getting it fishing clams or smaller baits like mullet, you can get down like the 4-0, 5-0, 6-0 size. Bloodworms, you'll see guys from 2-0 to 4-0 most commonly. Eels, 4-0, 5-0, 6-0 is somewhat common. There are scenarios where some people go bigger, smaller. heavier gauge. There's some different style hooks out there. If you want to dial down and get into those specifics, stop by the tackle shop. We'd love to help you guys out. In terms of leader material, most of the time we're fishing 40 pound, 50 pound, 60 pound. Sometimes when there's bluefish around, toothy critters, you start fishing heavier leaders, whether it's 60 or 80 pounds. Some people even go up to 100 pound, or you can switch gears and go over to wire. Wire leader is very, very helpful with toothy critters. In terms of bait fishing, you need to know what weight you need. Buying one sinker and heading up to the beach and thinking it's going to cover your day is definitely not going to do it. You're definitely going to need somewhat of a range of, say, 3, 4, up to 8 ounces. If you're going to be fishing in those heavier, windier, more rough conditions on the surf, you may even need 10 plus ounces. For the majority of surf fishing, I would say on a common, easygoing surf day in the fall, it's probably going to be in that 4 to 6 ounce range. Remember, you're also going to have bait weight added onto that. So you've got bait and weight. You put those two together, make sure your rods and reels can handle that. You definitely don't want to go up to the beach with a noodle and then try to throw 6 ounces in weight. It's going to overload the rod, definitely going to end in a bad situation.
Certain type of sinkers you use up front versus out back too, right, Greg?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are pyramid sinkers like this. There's also some frog tongue sinkers like this. These are very good when there's a longshore current. There's also some Hatter storm sinkers as well, but basically any sinker that's got some edges on it will definitely hold up better for you. Going back to talking about those rods, if you do not have a heavier rod and you need heavier weight, there's a little bit of a cheating way to accomplish it. It's called a longtail sinker or a barb sinker. You can fish a barb sinker in the 4 ounce range. It's going to hold like a 6 ounce. So for example, if you have a rod that only throws 5 ounces, you need to hold, let's say 5, 6 ounces of lead, meaning you can only fish up to 4 plus bait. Now you're at that 5, 6 ounce range. You could then fish a 3 or 4 ounce barb sinker with bait, maxing out your rod at say 6 ounces, and you can accomplish that day's task.
A lot of trial and error based on your rod, based on your reel, based on your line, based on where you're fishing and the current conditions, the sweep, the tide, the depth, the wind. So that's something that's learned over the years by making the trip, because every rod and every fisherman's a little different. So that's important that you figure out what the conditions are versus what the equipment is that you have, and where you're going to fish and what you're going to fish for.
So chunking bunker and fishing bait on the surf is very, very common. It's probably the most popular way of targeting striped bass and bluefish and kingfish and other species of fish along the beaches of LBI. However, there's also another style of fishing, which is fishing with lures. It's very effective. There's certain times you can actually outproduce bait when you're fishing lures in certain conditions. Ted is a very passionate angler when it comes to fishing lures. He's very experienced. He catches a lot of big fish on lures.
Yeah, that's my passion, is plugging, and we're going to try to keep it really, really simple today. One of the first things that we're going to talk about is just simply a swimming plug. There's numerous brands, there's numerous sizes, there's numerous colors, there's numerous shapes. There's small, there's large, etc. Always want to have a swimming plug or two with you when you go up over the dune. Then we'll talk about metal, commonly referred to as a Hopkins, as a diamond jig, as a crocodile. It's nothing more than a hammered steel, piece of steel, and as you can see here, I switch all mine out. I fish single hooks on the rears with a swivel. So we've talked about a swimming plug, we've talked about a piece of metal. I would say third to always have in your bag is some type of popper. This is about a medium size, and again, got a set of trebles on the front, a single with a bucktail on the rear. Then after a popper, we'll get into some bucktails. Bucktail, very, very, very versatile, very effective. There's all sorts of different sizes, there's different shapes, there's different colors, and you can doctor them up however you so choose with a piece of rubber on the rear. Plugging rods are built pretty specifically for plugging. You've got, again, small, medium, large, reels to match, line to match. Plugging is basically imitating bait fish to fool the game fish into striking your plug. I happen to have a lot of plugging bags over the years, and I found that the bigger your plugging bag, the more stuff you put in it. And considering every time you come back from plugging, you got to wash all your plugs off, it gets a little much. As you can see, just even in this 2-cell plugging bag, I've got it overloaded. And again, every one of those plugs at the end of every session has to get washed off and dried. I also like the fact that it's a small bag. I can go totally bare bones, or I can have it overstuffed, which is what usually happens. I'm not the biggest of guys, I like it small. Also on my belt, again, I have my pliers. Always got to have your pliers. I have what we call fish grips. When you're plugging and you've caught a fish and he's got a plug in his mouth and there's still some hooks flying around and you're attempting to unhook the fish, it happens, and it happens quick. Now you've got a fish on one set of hooks and you've got the other set of hooks in your hand. Very, very important that you take your time. Try to use fish grips if you can. Gives you a chance to keep the fish laying flat, keep them on a cool wet rock or in the wet sand on the beach. Take your time, remove the hooks properly without doing damage to the fish. And then what I also have on my belt here is a drag rope. If you so choose to bring home one for the dinner table, again, your hands are free. This drag rope opens up. I can walk behind me with a fish on the other end. It also comes in handy for a lot of other reasons when you're around the water and the rocks, which we don't need to get into right now. I've also got a cylindrical type pouch on this bag, which can be used for, what I do is put my wet plugs in there, the plugs that I've commonly used for the last hour or so. So they're in a separate container, and my other plugs aren't getting totally covered with salt water. And then I have a pouch in the back where I keep a lot of rubber. Should I decide to go to a bucktail and want to get into a specific color rubber. I have that right here on my pouch. I also have a little Tupperware container here that's got some terminal tackle in it. It's got clips in it. It's got swivels in it. It's got a very, very small knife in it. Just some of the things that I've learned to carry over the years to make things enjoyable. Better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. We can go on and on and on with plugs, but the basics are a swimming plug, a popper, a bucktail, and what I call a piece of metal. And there's different brands, shapes, sizes, colors. All your tackle shops cover a variety, and they're happy to let you know what's hot and what's not. Very, very informative, and your success matters to them. So don't be bashful in asking anyone that's in the shop. They'd be more than happy to point you in the right direction.
So there you have it. You see that Teddy keeps his stuff really nice and organized with a 2-tube bag. As you see, it's a nice quality bag where hooks don't get stuck in there. He also has a very nice, neat, orderly, very easy to access and use belt system with a plier holster, with the pouches, keeps everything orderly and right at his, easy access and at his disposal. If you notice, there's lanyards on there to keep everything secure so it doesn't drop something in the water or lose something. So if you're looking to get into fishing plugs and you're looking to kind of get more, advanced in that style of fishing, definitely ask questions, stop by any of the tackle shops. We'd love to help you at Fisherman's Headquarters. Whether it's a top of the line plug bag like this from Gear Up, which is a very, very good investment if you're looking to do this for many years. But we've also got plug bags starting at, let's say, $29, $39, $49. You can even start with a simple canvas bag or a simple backpack. Keep it as simple as you want. But if you wanted to get more into a strictly more focused surf belt and surf belt system, we've got all these components and all these different little pieces available. It's definitely your best interest if you are fishing lures to kind of have those essentials ready to rock and roll. It just makes it the experience and the trip that much easier, that much more enjoyable.
Hey, I want to drive on the beach. Wow. The first thing you want to do is you want to get a permit. The second thing you want to do is find out how much air you need to let out of your tires. And there's some general rules of thumb, but every truck's different. The other thing that we should all know by now is that when your tires are cold, they read differently than when your tires are hot. I make it a habit of airing down to my favorite pounds, which is 17, and I make sure I do it when my tires are ice cold in my driveway, not after I've driven from one end of the island to the other and I get a false reading. The other thing that you need to really do is you need to say to yourself, where am I going to get on? Where am I going to get off? What are the tides? What am I going to do when I get on the beach? And go check out the area that you're intending to drive. Don't come barreling up over the dune, sight unseen, after dark, in a hurry. You haven't aired down. Yeah, I'll get my permit tomorrow. There's only one show in town when you get stuck, and there's no conversation until they have your Visa card number. So what we always try to do is to be safe and be prepared and be able to help a fellow buggyist. I carry a milk crate in my truck. I've got a fire extinguisher in the milk crate. I've got a first aid kit in the milk crate. I've got a tow strap in the milk crate. I've got a block of wood in the milk crate, which you're gonna need in order to operate a jack should you get a flat tire. Flat tires on the beach do happen. Some locales require all of this to be in your buggy. I believe Island Beach does.
Yeah.
And they will stop and check occasionally, especially if it looks like you weren't prepared and don't know what you're doing. I also have a set of jumper cables in here. Might not be me this time, but it could be next time. You want to be prepared. The other thing that you want to remember about driving on the beach is you can always recover from being up high. You can't recover from being down low. Waiting it out is an easy thing versus being down low, and I think you know where I'm going with that. You've got much bigger issues than killing time. So again, there's a lot of folks around at a lot of the shops. They can give you some tips. They'd be happy to help you out. It's a experience thing, and there's a lot at stake. The other thing that you want to have is you want to have a full-length shovel. I also have a little foxhole shovel in this milk crate. But should you have to dig, it's a lot easier if you have a full-length shovel with you. And whether it's you or whether it's a fellow fisherman or fellow buggyist, there will come a time when you'll be asked to dig. And you can't do real well with the foxhole shovel that I keep as an emergency in my emergency kit. So that's it on the buggy scene. Ask around. Make sure you feel comfortable. Make sure you feel confident. There's plenty of folks at all three tackle shops. Be more than happy to spend a little time with you before you rip up over the dune and have to call South Shore Towing.
Yeah, so I would just like to add that just make sure if you are getting involved in it, know that your vehicle is ready for the beach. You know, you got to have four-wheel drive. All-wheel drive does not cut it. Oh. As Teddy mentioned, airing down is absolutely essential. Most of the time it's between 14 and 17 pounds, like Teddy mentioned. There are tire deflators that help you to do this in a quicker, say more automatic fashion, so you don't have to actually bend down and push and hold it. It's always good to have a tire gauge. There's a couple spots on the LBI to get free air. One of the most important things, in my opinion, is scouting out the ramps. You definitely don't want to go down a ramp and realize that there's a seawall at the end once you've already hit the seawall and bottomed out and now you're stuck. One thing I also find is very, very respectable to other drivers is driving in the ruts. People that drive like maniacs, S-turning all over the place, kind of ruin it for everybody. It makes the next guy who's coming down the beach, coming down those ruts, has to kind of jump around and jump between those tracks. It also destroys a lot of the beach entrances and exits. Those ramps are kind of the vital avenue on and off the beach. There's not a lot of them, but those key ones that are in certain areas of the town, which we'll provide a list of, are very, very important to allow access. Certain times there's a swell, there's high tides, they get washed out. There might only be one or two on the island that you can get through. And if some, say Nimrod comes through there, swerving all over the place or ripping through there with tires that are not aired down, they chew it up real bad, and then it ruins, say, one of the only ramps that are accessible. One other tip I like to share is drive slow. I believe
that the speed limit on the entire island is 15 miles per hour.
That's what I thought. I thought it was 10 or 15.
Max speed limit.
Yeah, there's really no need to go ripping down the beach. as everyone should know, texting and driving is definitely no-no on the road. It's definitely no-no on the beach. There has been history, there has been incidents where vehicles have hit people that are hanging out in the beach. It happens more so in the summertime, not mentioning by who, but there's trucks that rip along the beach in the summer going different places. You know, have your wits about you. Be very, very aware of your surroundings. Yeah, you want to be looking at the water. You want to be covering ground, which is probably one of the most and best advantages of driving the beach. You can cover so many miles of beach when you're you know, on the beach with a buggy, much more than you can with your feet. But you have to be very aware of what you're doing, where you're going. Driving in the ruts is probably the safest way because it's common knowledge. If you're hiking onto the beach, you do not set up a chair, a cooler, a picnic, kind of a hangout session in the ruts. If you didn't know that, it's common knowledge. Hopefully you know that now. Don't set up your day on the beach in the ruts. Always move away from them. And as I said before, the vehicle should be traveling in those ruts as it is the street. If everybody kind of abides by those rules, keeps things very, very simple and very, say, emergency free. Keeps those incidents to a minimum.
You could go on and on and on about buggies, but you know, if you're a little nervous and you're not a veteran, again, there's plenty of folks hanging around the shops. Pick their brain for a little bit. Make sure you're prepared. It's a plunge. It's a big investment. Should it not go well.
So we really hope you guys enjoyed this video about the equipment, about driving the beach, about plugging, about a couple different odds and ends, some different tackle. That Teddy was nice enough to spread out here and show kind of some of his essentials that he's used over many, many years of his fishing and over all the many years of his catching experiences here on Long Beach Island. I hope you join the fishing tournament. Long Beach Island Fishing Tournament runs every single fall, and there's also one in the spring as well. For 2020, it's the 66th anniversary, 66 years strong of great fish catching fun on LBI. Hope you join in and have a blast experiencing the LBI surf and the bay and all it has to offer.
Thanks a lot, everybody.